The sirens came before the shouting. Funny how you never forget the sound, even after everything that happened. That morning, the sun shimmered off my lake. My boots sunk ankle-deep in cold water, hands wrapped around the refill pipe, as my private well sent a rush straight into the pond I'd owned long before the HOA was even a whisper in this county. It smelled like wet earth, like freedom, at least until Karen's voice cut through it all, sharp as a cracked bell. There he is. That's the man stealing community water. I already called the cops. My head snapped up. And sure enough, there she was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, arms crossed, phone pressed so tight to her ear I thought it'd break, sunglasses reflecting blue and red as the cruiser came rolling down my gravel drive. The tires crunched to a stop. 2 officers got out, hands on their belts, glancing from me to Karen like they'd wandered into a family feud nobody warned them about. She didn't wait for them to ask a thing. He's diverting water. He's draining the HOA system to fill that ridiculous pond. The younger deputy knelt by my hose, tracing it back up the bank, squinting into my steel pump house. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady. "This line's hooked to a private well." Karen's face twitched, stuck mid-rant. "That's impossible. The HOA owns this property line." The older deputy gave me a look. "You got proof?" I wiped the mud off my hands and tried not to laugh. "Yeah, officer. But you're better off seeing for yourself." I led them to the old shed by the fence, the one Karen liked to call her future garden shed. Only, inside, the hum of pipes and control valves was as clear as day. Brass tags glinted under the flashlight, property numbers stamped right on him. Mine. Karen's face lost every drop of color. Then, as if the universe just wanted to twist the knife, a voice crackled over the police radio. "We've got a major pressure drop in the HOA main. Possible leak near the east boundary." East boundary? My property. Right where Karen was standing. She stammered. "No. That can't be." The ground shivered. Then water burst up through the soil, muddy and wild, soaking her stack of HOA meeting notes as she screamed and staggered backward. The deputy just stared. "Well, ma'am, looks like we found where your line runs through." She stood there, drenched, realizing she'd just called the cops on the only man who could save her community's water. The wind rattled her HOA sign against the fence, and for a moment, I honestly wondered how deep this mess went, and how much deeper it could get. The next day, the air felt too quiet, even for my little corner of the world. No sprinkler hiss, no mowers whining across those perfect lawns. Just me, my coffee, and the knowledge that Karen wasn't done. By 8 a.m., there she was at the boundary, visor low, pacing like a prosecutor, phone glued to her ear. A few minutes later, Dave, my neighbor, one of the good ones, rolled up on his ATV. "Morning, Sam. Brace yourself. Karen just sent out a community alert. Says you sabotaged the HOA main and you're hoarding the neighborhood's water in your lake." I about spit out my coffee. "Hoarding? It's groundwater, Dave." He chuckled. "Yeah, well, logic don't fly in Karen land. There's an emergency HOA meeting this afternoon, and she's bringing a county inspector." I wasn't surprised. She'd fight to her last breath to keep control. Later that day, a little crowd gathered at the fence, folding chairs, a banner flapping in the breeze. Water justice for all. Karen stood at the front with her clipboard, shouting for order. "One of our so-called neighbors has stolen what rightfully belongs to the community, our water." The crowd nodded, though most of them hadn't ever bothered to read a property line in their life. Right then, a pickup truck rolled up. Out stepped the inspector, tall, in uniform, steady eyes, and his own clipboard. Karen rushed over, all but throwing her soggy HOA bylaws at him. "He's stealing our water." The inspector flipped through her stack, then frowned. "Ma'am, these are HOA bylaws, not county documents. They apply to your members, not adjacent landowners, especially not private AG property like this one." Karen blinked, face twitching. "You mean he's allowed to do this? If his well's permitted and not connected to your system?" "Yes, absolutely." I strolled over, holding my well permit, up to date and official since 2016. Karen looked like she was chewing glass. The inspector peered at her. "Ma'am, what made you think his well was tied to your line?" Karen pointed at the lake. "When he started refilling it, our pressure dropped." "What else could it be?" The inspector just shrugged. "Pressure drops come from breaks, not theft." Everyone's eyes drifted to the muddy patch where yesterday's geyser had erupted. The inspector crouched, poked at the ground. Looks like a damaged main, probably old piping. Karen stammered, but it's on his land. You sure about that? The inspector asked. She hesitated. I think so. He shook his head. If so, your HOA is in violation. No water lines can cross private land without written easement. The crowd grew restless. Easement. The word hit like thunder. If Karen was wrong, the HOA was in real trouble. Right on cue, another metallic crack split the air, and a fresh fountain of brown water shot up by the fence. People scrambled. Someone shouted, "Turn it off." But it was too late. The pipe burst, soaking everyone, including Karen's brand-new blouse. The inspector yelled into his radio for the utility team. I just watched, arms folded. All this over me filling my own lake. When the water finally stopped, Karen pointed at me, her voice shrill. You're paying for this. For your pipe bursting under my land. I raised an eyebrow. You tampered with it. The inspector shut that down fast. Ma'am, it failed because it's old and overloaded. You'll need to file for repairs with the county. He asked to see my boundary markers. I led him to my shed, where I kept everything labeled and in order. He traced the lines, whistled low. Well, I'll be. The HOA main cuts 30 feet through your property, Sam. They installed a public utility with no permission. Karen's face collapsed. The inspector told her flat. Ignorance doesn't erase the boundary. You'll need to pay for an easement and for the damages. Karen tried to whisper it away. We'll handle repairs privately. The inspector just shook his head. This is public infrastructure. It has to be documented. The word cost made Karen look like she was about to faint. One of her board members, clipboard trembling, whispered, If this gets reported, we're done. Karen tried a last-ditch plea. Surely we can keep this quiet. No, ma'am. You should have checked your maps before digging up someone else's land. That night, as the crows squawked over the muddy fields, I watched Karen pacing under her porch light. Later, I caught her and two others with flashlights, measuring the fence line, muttering about fixing this mistake. I called out, Care to explain why you're surveying my land at midnight? She vanished into the shadows. The next morning, my well valve had been tampered with, a smear of red paint matching Karen's sign. That pushed things over the line. When the inspector checked county records, he found the HOA had no easement. Their main ran straight across my land illegally. And worse, it had tapped into a decommissioned city line buried since the 70s. The HOA had been using my land and an old city pipe for decades, all without a shred of paperwork. When the city found out, the place turned into a circus, county trucks, inspectors, even historians poking around my woods. The big twist? Beneath my property was a hidden municipal reservoir, a literal underground lake feeding not just my well, but half the neighborhood, all because the developer cut corners decades back. Karen's face, when she realized her power trip had uncovered a secret aquifer. Priceless. The city classified my reservoir as a historic site. I was named steward, with rights and compensation. The HOA, now led by George, the quiet guy in the back, paid me for easement rights and started rebuilding, the right way this time. Karen? She lost the presidency, but stayed on as an advisor. Even showed up at my kitchen table once, apologizing with tears in her eyes, admitting she'd confused power for purpose after her husband passed. In the end, I didn't sue. Spite's just another kind of control, and I was tired of that. We both learned something. She learned to let go. I learned that fighting isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about revealing what's buried. Weeks later, Dave handed me a newspaper. Farmer discovers hidden lake beneath his land. Famous now, apparently. I'd rather have my peace. Sometimes Karen drops by, just to chat, maybe fish a little. The land feels healed, at least for now. And as the sun sets over both my lakes, the one you can see and the one still hidden below, I realize the battles we fight often reveal the treasures we'd never have found if we hadn't stood our ground. So tell me, where are you watching from? Ever had a fight over something you didn't know was worth more than gold? Drop your stories, your hometown, your thoughts about justice below. Let's hear how far this story travels, and what secrets your land might be hiding, too.